Tonight, we'll start the political season, then introduce you to some great work done by a charter group here in Baton Rouge. But we'll start with a family treat. I'll tell you all about it. Roll it, Scott. Oh, there's a rumor going around that fall is here. Got me in a pretty good mood. And so will our first and second segment tonight have you in a really good mood. I would like to introduce you to the Judges Johnson. Took me a couple weeks to come up with that one. Judge Ronald Johnson.
Thank you.
Judge Ebony Johnson Rose. And Judge Don Johnson, who's been here before. Chief Judge at the 19th JDC, Criminal District 4.
Yes.
And the Veterans and Treatment Court at the 19th JDC.
And the Civil District Court as well.
And the Civil District Court. And it's interesting, so we have a lot to get into in these couple segments. First of all, this makes me incredibly proud to see and be able to talk about here for reasons that people can't imagine, of course, but also knowing how committed you are to the public sector and being able to get our understanding of law to our community. Let's start at the beginning. You two both started with an eye on engineering.
Yes.
And then worked your way to law, as I understand it, because of civil rights and some of the injustices that you saw growing up. Can y'all talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I'll always defer to the
No, I
chief.
defer to you. he's a 5 minute older.
That's right.
So I'll
Yeah,
defer
I was
to
going to say, if y'all wonder, they look a lot alike. That's because they're twins. So, Judge?
Well, early on in life, we had some challenges that we had to persevere and adjust to, and our educational pursuit allowed us to do that. And we eventually graduated to here from the public school system out of Baton Rouge High School, and started our educational career at Southern University in engineering. I was in engineering technology and graduated out of engineering, and lo and behold, my brother calls me one afternoon and said, "We're going to law school." And so I picked up my things and got a U-Haul, picked them up out of St. Louis, Missouri, and came back to Baton Rouge, and our law career began.
But that's so interesting because you went to Southern Law and you went to LSU Law School. So we're going to law school, just not the same one.
Yes, yes,
Tell me about that.
Well, we had a theory
Okay.
that it didn't matter where you went, it's what you learned.
Right, okay.
So we tested that model, and we both went to separate law schools. Ron always said he was in the top of his class and I was somewhere in the middle, but that was fine with me because he did quite well with that.
Graduated cum laude
Yes.
from Southern Law School.
Yes.
Yeah, but then you're no slouch with 7 degrees,
Yes,
by the
yes.
way. Y'all heard that right, 7 degrees. So this influence, I mean, obviously you can't avoid the influence of seeing such success in education and in law around you. How prominent and how early was the impact on you?
Very early. So my dad always stressed education. And so that's why all of my sisters have advanced degrees. The law was always my passion since I was in high school. Actually, we had a demonstration when I was in the 12th grade because of racial injustice. And so I knew then that I had a voice and I wanted to utilize that voice for those that didn't have one.
So, as you matriculate through the process and understanding how law functions and the benefit it has to the community, what were your priorities, right? I mean, obviously you start getting a law degree, sitting on the bench is further down the road. What were your priorities? How did you see this as a tool that you could use for the greater good?
Well, I knew that my community, at least the community that I lived in, needed a voice, as well as trained individuals in the law to try and combat some of that injustices that our community were suffering under. And I knew that we had to become knowledgeable about the law. And so as a result of that, law school was in the path toward trying to get a larger measure of justice for those in our community. And thus, here we are some 40 years later. When I first started practicing law, there were no African-American judges. And so we have evolved over a 40-year journey into where we are now, where we have the first family of African American judges sitting on the court together.
That's correct.
First in the nation, almost on the same court, first in the state. And so our paths crossed and our paths have evolved to where we are now.
That's just such an incredible thing to hear. It just, like I said, it makes me proud. And we got about 30 seconds, and then, well, I'll tell you what, I won't have to cut you off before we go into break. We'll come back and give you a shot at that question, and you too as well, Judge. Talking to, as I call them, the Judges Johnson, a fantastic family, fantastic story. For me, it's incredibly motivating for our community to see this, for all of the reasons that you think about. The fact that people of color can achieve at a high level, and that you can do it because they did it.
Yes.
That's fascinating. And up next, we'll talk about some work done by a charter here. Stay right there. Back with the judges in just a moment. So if you're just joining us, this is really, as Judge Ron Johnson said, the first family of law here in Louisiana, a fantastic reflection of what can be accomplished, not just here in Louisiana, but in our country. And I was asking going into break, Judge, about you moving through the process of law school and figuring how can I use this knowledge for purposes other than your own. What were the things that you thought about?
So I really thought about the younger generation and the fact that I was the second generation to have matriculated through law school. I knew that I had a voice, and I knew that there would be people that would listen to me because of my experiences. And so that's why I spend so much time with young people, especially going to high schools and middle schools, talking to them, letting them know that there is a life, even though you may come from the most humble beginnings, that does not have to be the end of your story. And so I try to share my experiences with them, letting them know that the law, you don't just have to practice law. It gives you a sense of analysis and really knowing how to maneuver through life with a greater sense of purpose when you have a law degree. It will open doors for you that you couldn't even imagine. You don't necessarily have to practice law just because you have a law degree, but you will have the ability to have an analytical mind.
Okay, same question, Judge.
Yes, the essence of it is use of the law to effect change and putting value in people's lives. So the idea is knowledge of the law and make it useful for everyone. Make it accessible and make it purposeful. And then to have the community believe that it's for them. When a large segment believe that there's no trust in the justice system, there's no buy-in. So part of our role is to make sure that the community as a whole knows that the justice system is for everyone, and we want you to believe in it.
You know, it's interesting because as sitting judges, there is such a strict prescription of what you can and cannot talk about because of your professional capacity. There's lots of things you have to stay away from, politics and all of that. But how do you navigate that to still be able to mentor and instruct in a positive way the community to make them understand, as the judge said, that the law does not necessarily have to be your enemy and that it can function in a way that works to your benefit? How do you stay between the ditches, as I like to call it? And anyone can take a shot at that.
Well, when we are out in the community, just explaining to people how the process actually works. So we are prohibited from actually discussing a particular case, but we can always give examples, right? We can speak very high level, but then try to also explain it where you could understand it on your level, wherever you are. And so we do that through the various programs that we have at our court. My dad sitting on the Veterans Court, my uncle being on the drug recovery court for many, many years. So we can speak to people where they are, and we can do that in the community.
Judge, there's a lot of conversation about social justice now, and I think that there are more people, young people, trying to understand what their rights are. And they're sharing information about what their rights are, not just on the side of a highway, but in their business or in their home. Can you grade for me how that is working for us now, and how would you instruct the public to think about having knowledge of their own personal rights?
Well, individuals who live in impoverished areas and individuals who are poor have a great desire to know whether the law is accessible, whether the law will be there for them in terms of the court system. Some feel that they don't have equal access. Some feel they won't be treated fairly. And so as a judge on the 19th Judicial District Court, it's our responsibility as judges to make sure that the public understand that we're there to hear their cases, we're there to hear their matters, and to render justice fairly and equally to the public. Historically, we know that African Americans and the poor has not been treated fairly before the court system. That's just a fact of the historical development of our nation. Right. But now that we are here as African Americans, and our role, a unique part of our role, is to make sure that we are accessible to the public, that we are listening to the public, and that we hear what the public is telling us to make sure that we are available and accessible to the public.
How do you keep the noise out? I mean, I know that's an interesting question, because again, you have to be so specific in how you dialogue about anything, but there is so much. And Scott, I want to add another minute to this segment. There is so much noise out there. How do you keep it out?
It's not that difficult, because we ascribe to a code of conduct. We have obligations that we swore an oath to, and we are not lacking in the ability to say no. And that's a capacity that a judge must have, the ability to say no, and the ability to say to the powerful, or those that are used to customary ways of doing business. A judge has to be central to know that I am a judge. I am not one side or the other. And that is innate. We're not taught that. That's something that innately we've subscribed to. And we get up every day with that model in mind, and we live that model, and we carry it out. And we're required to hold our fellow judges accountable when we see ethical lapses or what have you. So it's a part of our role.
Judge, we got a little less than a minute left. Quickly, let's talk about this honor that you're going to receive this fall in Nevada. It's fascinating. Talk about that.
So my uncle is actually going to be the one receiving it.
But you nominated him.
I did. I nominated him because of all of his work throughout the years. My uncle has been on the bench for the last 30 years. He's been a practitioner for over 40 years, and he's done so much for the Baton Rouge community. He's done so much to advance our court with access to true justice. Realizing that we have a responsibility to those in the community that are suffering from mental illness, that are also suffering from different types of illnesses, to help those individuals receive the treatment that they need. And that's why he's going to be honored in the fall of this year at our National Judicial College.
So fascinating. I could talk more, but we got to run.
You.
Collegiate Academy is next.
Yes. Thank you so much.